Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Hello everyone, welcome to Daily News Simplified. In this session, I am going to ride you through today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition, dated 12th August 2020. We shall look into the newspaper article from the perspective of civil service examination. The articles that we shall take up for discussion has been tabulated on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been given in the description section. This is a lead article from page number 6. It is titled India's Population Data and Tale of Two Projections. This article basically has been written because the author got intrigued by a report published in a reputed journal, The Lancet, by an international reputed institution, Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. Presently, the population of India is around 1.38 billion. The report published in The Lancet says that the population of India will peak to 1.61 billion in the year 2048. The surprising part of the report is the number that it gives for the population of India by the turn of the century. The report says that by the end of the 21st century, by the year 2100, the population of India will drop down to 1.09 billion. Not only this, the report says that the population can actually be as low as 724 million. This is in variance with the projection of UN, although the first half of the projection is almost similar. UN has projected Indian population to peak by the year 2050 and the peak population would be 1.64 billion. But by the end of the century, Indian population will be around 1.44 billion as per the estimate of the UN. Now the discussion in the article is about this gap. Why there is a difference in the projection of UN and the projection of Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation. The article finds out that there is one fallacy in the basic underlined assumption of the Lancet report, and that fallacy is the prevalence of contraception in India. According to the fourth round of National Family Health Survey, the overall contraceptive prevalence rate is just 54%, and the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation used this data. And according to this data, the scope of increasing the use of contraceptive is very high, and as that uses increase, the fertility rate will decrease and hence the projected population will further decrease. According to the report, the total fertility rate in India by the year 2100 will come down to 1.29. But the same report says that the total fertility rate of US will be 1.53, that of France will be 1.78. And the author finds it very difficult to explain the gap between the fertility rate of India and US or India and France. This cannot be explained. There is no way that the Indian parents will be less committed to child rearing than Americans or the French. So there must be a flaw in the statistical analysis, and the flaw is here. This 54% actually is underreported. According to National Council of Applied Economic Research and National Data Innovation Center, the contraceptive use in the National Family Health Survey is poorly estimated. So using the National Family Health Survey data will yield incorrect result. So presently we stand by the projections of the United States that India's population is going to peak by 2050. It will be around 1.64 billion, and by the turn of the century our population will be around 1.44 billion. But be whatever it may, it is a fact by the mid of the century our population is going to peak. And what the population will be around the turn of the century, that will depend upon the fertility rate. There is no doubt in that. But the discussion that we will take further from here is on what factor will the fertility rate depend. Fertility rate in India has been declining continuously after independence. There are two terms here that you need to be familiar with. One is total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is the measure of number of children born to a woman at the end of childbearing age. For instance, the present fertility rate in India is 2.2. This means that on an average, a woman in India gives birth to 2.2 children by the end of her reproductive age. Replacement rate is the average number of children a woman needs to have to keep the population at a constant size. Ideally, if parents have two children, then those two children will replace the two parents and the population should be constant. But there are unforeseen instances of accidents, of some epidemic, death due to some disease. So, if two parents are giving birth to two children, then because of some external factors, the population will actually decrease. So, to keep the population constant, the total fertility rate must be slightly higher than 2, and that is considered to be 2.1. So, the replacement rate is considered to be 2.1. Fertility rate in India has continuously decreased. In 1950s, the fertility rate was 6. In 1960s, it reduced only marginally to 5.9. Despite massive push for family planning during 1960s and 70s, including the forced sterilization program Nasbandi during emergency led to decrement of only 17% in the total fertility rate from 5.9 to 4.9 by 1980. It came down to 3.4 by 1990. But after 1990 till 2015, the decline in fertility rate was the highest, from 3.4 to 2.3. And in 2017, we came down to 2.2. See, we have to decrease our fertility rate further from 2.2 to 2.1. And it is expected that by end of 2020, naturally, it will come down to 2.1. So what is the issue if we are very close to reaching to replacement rate of 2.1? The issue is that there is huge difference in the fertility rate from urban population to rural population, from literate population to illiterate population, and there's difference among communities too. So we need to correct those differences in the fertility rate, and for that, what path will we adopt? That we have to choose. Whether that will be aggressive family planning as we have seen from 1960 to 1980, or through punitive measures and coercive actions, or we do it through increasing the aspiration of people and development at individual and societal level as happened after 1990. This graph clearly shows that rate of decrement of total fertility rate is much higher after 1990. This means that development is the best tool to control population. We have tried other things and we have not gained the desired result. We have tried aggressive family planning from 1960, and from 1975, targets were given to the family planning workers regarding sterilization, condom distribution, and intrauterine device insertion. Because of the targets, the family planning scheme became coercive. But in 1994, everything ended. In 1994, UN organized a conference on population and development called as Cairo Conference on Population and Development. In this conference, it was decided that coercive family planning is not going to work and the target-based family planning schemes were dropped by the nations. But even then, punitive policies were carried on by many states in India. Punishments were given in various forms for having more children than two. For instance, denial of maternity leave for the third child, limiting the benefits of the maternity schemes as well, and in some cases, disqualification for contesting local elections. Till date in India, there are 8 states: Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Bihar, and now Assam, which has two-child policies. Assam is the state with most punitive action. It has barred anyone with more than 2 children from running any kind of elections, holding a government job, or being eligible for government schemes and entitlements. You must also be aware of a private member bill, Population Regulation Bill 2019. This bill calls for punitive action against people with more than 2 living children and making them devoid of any government services. The bill also suggests that government employees should give an undertaking that they will not procreate more than 2 children. However, there are empirical evidence that punitive policies brings the burden of disqualification and disincentives on already marginalized section of the society. That is why National Human Rights Commission's 2003 declaration has called two-child policy prescription a violation of the principle of informed choice and human rights of the people. According to National Human Rights Commission, there are evidence that two-child policy has led to desertion of wives, desertion and killing of female children, non-registration of births, non-immunization of daughters, sex selection and forced abortion. In this context, it is very important for you to be aware of India's stand at the Global Population Summit that happened in Nairobi in 2019. At the Global Population Summit, India has took a stand that the best way for population control is to give voluntary and informed choices of contraceptives to people. India has reiterated its stand of guaranteeing voluntary and informed choice of contraception to people. India also said that it would increase its basket of contraceptives and improve the quality of family planning services. So that can be taken as the official stand that India took at the Global Population Summit as the stand of Government of India on population control. So it's very, very important, and this has to be used in any mains answer pertaining to population control. So now we are looking at aspirational revolution. That seems to be the only way out for sustaining population at constant level. As we have seen earlier that after 1990, there was drastic decrement in total fertility rate. And we all are aware that socio-economic condition of people improved at a higher pace. The growth rate of Indian economy was higher after 1990. So socio-economic transformation of Indian society has played a great role in decreasing the total fertility rate and arresting the rate of increase of population. Over this period, agriculture became an increasingly small part of Indian economy. The enrollment rate in school and colleges increased. The per capita income also increased because of increased opportunity in economic activity. So now a farmer does not look at his children and see them as manpower who can help in agricultural activities in the field, but rather the parents are more concerned for sending their children to better quality of private schools and then coaching. So it was the aspirational revolution which caused decrement in total fertility rate in India. What the government needs to ensure is that the health and family welfare system is up to this challenge and provides contraception and sexual and reproductive health services that allow individuals to have only as many children as he or she wants. In the final stage of our discussion, we will emphasize more on this section. It is the aspiration and development of the society that actually causes decrement in the total fertility rate and improves the quality of human resource so that a nation can capitalize on the demographic dividend. This is an important aspect that can be asked in the exam. How population is dependent upon development or vice versa? Does increase in population cause increase in poverty and suffering of people? And what could be the best strategy in controlling the population of a nation? For this, you have to have certain data to back your stand. Your stand will always be the stand that Government of India took at Global Population Summit in Nairobi in 2019. And you need to back that stand with the data as follows. The point we are trying to prove is that development is related with the fertility rate of a society. For instance, the total fertility rate in India in the urban region is 1.7. It has gone down from the replacement rate of 2.1. But in the rural region, it is 2.4. And we know the developmental gaps between the urban region and the rural region. 7 states in India have recorded total fertility rate higher than the national average of 2.2. And these 7 states constitute 45% of the total population of India as per the last census. They are Uttar Pradesh having total fertility rate of 3, Bihar 3.2, Madhya Pradesh 2.7, Rajasthan 2.6, Assam 2.3, Chhattisgarh 2.4 and Jharkhand 2.5. These states are relatively lagging in the developmental stage compared to other states. So here once again we have shown that total fertility rate is actually the indicator of the developmental stage of a society. Further, total fertility rate goes below 2, both in rural and urban areas where girls complete schooling, and it reduces even further if they pass college. In Bihar, the total fertility rate is 3.2 and the maximum percentage of literacy in women is 26.8%. In Kerala, which has lowest fertility rate in India, has the literacy rate of 99.3% among women. So this clearly shows that the development at individual and social level is the determining factor of total fertility rate. The relatively well-off states of the south have lower total fertility rate. In Kerala is 1.7, Tamil Nadu 1.6, Karnataka 1.7, Maharashtra 1.7, Andhra Pradesh 1.7, Telangana 1.7. If you talk on the community level, different religious social communities in India also have different total fertility rate. But even in that, the determining factor is development rather than the religion or the social belief. For instance, the total fertility rate in 2011 in Uttar Pradesh was 3.3. In Kerala, it was 1.8. The national average was 2.4. If you look at two major communities in these two states, in Uttar Pradesh, the Muslim population rose by around 25%. But in Kerala, the Muslim population rose by around 13% between 2001 and 2011. If you look at the Hindu population in Uttar Pradesh, it rose by 18.9%. And the Hindu population in Kerala rose by 2.8%. So if you see, the Muslim population rose greater in Uttar Pradesh than in Kerala, and same goes for Hindu population, and same would go for any other community or any other religion or even atheist people. So this is basically a developmental phenomena and not a phenomena so much related with the belief or the religion or the caste or the custom. So using these data, you can comprehensively prove your stand that total fertility rate is actually the indicator of the developmental level of a community, of a state, of a nation. In conclusion, I'll say two things. Number one, total fertility rate and the rate of population growth is dependent upon the developmental stage of a nation. And number two, people should not be looked as burden. So we should not coercively try to reduce the population of a nation. Rather, we should ensure the development of every citizen. If we do that, there will be no problem at all. Julian Simons, in his book The Ultimate Resource, has written that human beings are the ultimate resource. Human beings interact with each other in a positive some ways. Population is never a problem, provided there is a skill, there is civic sense. Nicholas Eberstadt, he was an American political economist. He has said that there is no correlation between population density and poverty, implying that population of a nation does not put burden on the resources of the nation. He gives example that Monaco has 40 times density of Bangladesh. Still, Monaco is very prosperous. Similarly, Bahrain has 3 times population density of India, and HDI index of Bahrain is 0.8. So population of a nation is resource and not a burden. There is a news article on page number 5. The Environment Minister of Maharashtra has written to the Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change on draft EIA notification. This has been making news for quite some time. The draft EIA has been widely criticized for its problematic changes in the rules for the environment impact assessment. It allegedly will increase the government's discretionary power while limiting the public engagement in safeguarding the environment. Let me quickly give you the background of development of the concept of environment impact assessment globally and in India. Let me first give you a quick background of development of concept of EIA globally and in India. The story of global environmental conservation effort began with the Stockholm Convention. India became signatory to the Stockholm Declaration 1972. In 1972, UN organized a meeting in Stockholm in Sweden as a first global effort for environmental conservation. As a signatory to the declaration, India enacted Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974 and also Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. But it took the Bhopal gas leak disaster of 1984 to bring Indian government into action to enact an umbrella act on environmental protection called as Environmental Protection Act 1986. But there is no explicit provision of environmental impact assessment in the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. There are general provisions for conservation of environment, and EIA is considered as one of the mechanisms for environmental conservation. So EIA in India has a statutory backing. The backing comes from the Environmental Protection Act 1986, but the detailed provision is not there in the Act. Rather, it is separately given in notifications of EIA, which has legal backing in the Act. The concept of EIA finally was materialized at the global level in the 1992 Rio Declaration. Rio Declaration said that environmental issues are best handled through participation of all concerned citizens, and that state must provide an opportunity to citizens to participate in decision-making process concerning environmental conservation. After that, in 1994, Environment Clearance for Development Project was made mandatory for the first time under the Environment Protection Act, and hence began the concept of EIA in India. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change does the regulation for the EIA process, and through the EIA notification from time to time, it sets the rules. Presently, we follow the norms as per the EIA notification of 2006. And the draft EIA notification has come for 2020, and this has raked up many controversies. So one by one, let's look at the controversy which has been raked up by the notification. But remember, this is still a draft notification. Maybe major changes will be done in this. Once the final EIA notification comes, only then you have to freeze points in your mind for the examination. Let's see the contentious issues in the draft EIA notification 2020. First and foremost, there is a provision of post facto approval. The new notification allows for post facto approval of projects. It means that the clearance for projects can be given even if they have started construction. And in that case, the only remedy would be to impose fine or punishment to the concerned party. But that would not reverse the detrimental consequences on the environment. This post facto approval is against the fundamental principle of environmental jurisprudence, which is precautionary principle. There are some principles in the environmental jurisprudence like precautionary principle, polluters pay principle, people's participation principle, which are considered essential for environmental sustainability, and they should not be violated by any governmental policy or norms. Also, there is already precedence against the post facto approval in India. In 2017, Madras High Court cancelled the post facto approvals given to some projects in state of Tamil Nadu. So it is not very clear how government is going to legally defend this post facto approval provision in the new EIA notification. There are also concerns against dilution of EIA norms for hydel power projects. See, EIA notification has categorized all projects into two categories, Category A and Category B. Category A projects are those which are located in the eco-sensitive zones and thus are mandatorily required to undergo EIA process. Category B is further subcategorized as B1 and B2. B1 projects require EIA to be done by the states, not by the central ministry, and B2 projects are exempted from EIA. But a screening process has to be done to identify whether a project will be B1 project or B2 project. What the new EIA notification has done, it has put all hydel power projects below 25 megawatt installed capacity under B2 category. So they will be exempted altogether from EIA. This blanket exemption has been criticized very much. The new EIA notification has introduced the concept of economically sensitive areas. So certain areas will be declared as economically sensitive areas, and projects in these areas will be exempted from all kind of public hearing and environmental clearances. So it is alleged that now industries that severely damage environment, industries which are in red and orange category, they can now operate very close to protected areas if the adjoining region of the protected area will be declared as economically sensitive area. The new notification gives more discretionary power to administration with regard to declaration of strategic projects. Although national defense and security are naturally considered strategic, but the new notification gives power to the government to decide on the strategic tag of any given project. And the notification says that no information on such project shall be placed in the public domain. So any project by discretion of the government can be declared strategic, and that will be exempted from any kind of environmental clearance, and no explanation has to be given for that. The new EIA notification also give a long list of projects that will be exempted from public consultation. That will include coal mining and seismic survey for oil, methane and shale gas on some particular locations. There is also an issue of conflict of interest. See, the thing is, EIA is usually carried out by expert appraisal committee. The members of expert appraisal committee are the members generally from CWC, the Central Water Commission, the River Valley Project chairmen and their members, generally the experts in the environment, and they are also the office bearers of central and state government. So the interest of these officers obviously will lie in encouraging these projects. A member of any River Valley project will like the River Valley project to be developed. So there is high chance on compromising on environmental justice and environmental considerations. That amounts to a clear-cut case of conflict of interest. It was hoped that in the new notification this will be addressed, but this unaddressed issue has not been touched upon in the new notification as well. Also, there are other issues like increased validity of the environmental clearance for mining projects. Previously, it was 30 years, and now it has been increased to 50 years. Once you get an EIA, you are free for next 50 years. Similarly, for River Valley projects, it has been increased from 10 years to 15 years. And on the other hand, it has shortened the period of public consultation to a maximum of 40 days. And it also has shortened the time provided to the public to submit their responses from 30 days to now 20 days. It has been alleged by many stakeholders that the new notification will reduce or even remove altogether public participation, the independent expert opinion from the process of granting environmental clearances. To conclude, I'd like to bring your attention to Samarth Trust case. In this case, the Delhi High Court had considered EIA as part of participatory justice, in which the voice is given to the voiceless, and it is like a Jan Sunwai, where community is the jury. So in the spirit of participatory justice and environmental justice, some of the measures recommended in the draft EIA notification must be amended as per the concerns raised by the citizens. This is a lead article from page number 6. It has been titled The Future of Indian Secularism. In the article, the author is lamenting that religion-based politics is being played out in India. He has made a distinction between party political secularism and constitutional secularism. He also has suggested very important measures to safeguard secularism in India. He has suggested revival of intra-religious reforms, which we will talk about in the second half of our discussion. Secularism, apart from communalism and regionalism, has been mentioned in the syllabus of GS paper 1. And question has been asked from this particular topic, secularism, with very high frequency. In 2014, UPSC asked this question: how do the Indian debates on secularism differ from the debates in the West? Then the same thing was asked in a roundabout manner in 2018. How the Indian concept of secularism is different from the Western model of secularism. In 2019, UPSC asked what are the challenges to our cultural practices in the name of secularism. UPSC also asked another question: what can France learn from Indian constitution's approach to secularism? In the coming years also, UPSC will definitely ask questions from secularism. You need to have a comprehensive notes on this particular topic. We will first understand the concept of constitutional secularism. Constitutional secularism is marked by two features. One is respect for all religion without any discrimination. And the other, state must keep a principled distance from all religion. The Indian constitution allows individuals the freedom to live by their religious beliefs and practices, as they interpret them. In keeping with this idea of religious freedom for all, India also adopted a strategy of separating the power of religion and the power of the state. Article 25 says that subject to public order, morality and health and to other provisions in the third part of the Constitution, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion. But everyone cannot freely profess, practice and propagate religion unless there is religious tolerance. Thus, religious tolerance and equal treatment of all religious groups are essential parts of secularism. So, secularism in India does not mean being irreligious. It rather means respect for each faith and religion. The state does not identify itself with any particular religion. So, in India, there is no state religion or any preferred religion. All religious groups enjoy the same constitutional protection without any favor or discrimination. The important constitutional articles with regard to freedom of religion are these. Article 25 gives freedom of conscience and freedom to profess, practice and propagate religion. Article 26 gives freedom to manage religious affairs. Article 27 gives freedom from payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. Citizens cannot be forced to pay taxes for promotion of any one particular religion by the state. Article 28 gives freedom from attendance at religious instructions or religious worship in educational institutions which are funded by the state. Those educational institutions which are funded by the state cannot force the students to take religious instructions or to do any particular kind of religious worship. All these constitutional provisions are to ensure that one religious community does not dominate another. Some members do not dominate other members of the same religious community, and a state does not enforce any particular religion nor take away the religious freedom of individuals. Party political secularism, on the other hand, is based on political opportunism. It is a term that author is said to have coined. You can use this term in your mains answer as well. As per the author, the political parties are practicing party political secularism and they decide their opportunistic engagement or disengagement with any religious activity or ceremony in a very calculative way for immediate electoral benefit. All religious activities pursued are based on set agenda of electoral dividend, even at the cost of communal violence or dividing society in the name of religion. In the article, the author is saying that the state allegedly has moved away from principled distance as envisaged in Article 25 of our Constitution. Thus, constitutional secularism has been swallowed up. It has been engulfed, it has been bulldozed, it has been overpowered by party political secularism, with little help coming from opposition, media and judiciary. So what to do now? The author, however, is very optimistic. The author says that there could be setback to the practice of secularism in India for a few years. But there cannot be death of constitutional secularism. Secularism in India has been grounded in millennia-old pluralist tradition and cannot be easily brushed aside. But certain measures has to be taken to safeguard this cultural practice of ours. The author invoked Jawaharlal Nehru and B.R. Ambedkar to safeguard the practice of secularism in India. Author suggests two things. First, there should be a shift of focus from politically led project to socially driven movement for justice. And second, a shift of emphasis from inter-religious to intra-religious issues must be happening. This is a very important point suggested by the author which you must take note of for your examination. The author has given two observations of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and these observations are important for secularism to be practiced in India from the perspective of social harmony and social justice. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar talked about a majority-minority syndrome. Dr. Ambedkar said that when two roughly equal communities view each other as enemies, then they get trapped in a majority-minority syndrome. And there is a spiraling vicious cycle of political conflict and social alienation from each other. This was observed in India in 1930s and 1940s. But now there is no two roughly equal communities. And if one community opts out from the political discourse, then there is no majority minority syndrome. Rather, that syndrome implodes. That syndrome shrinks and vanishes. But the important point to take note of is that there is no open conflict or disharmony, but still there is exiled existence of one community in their homeland. There is no competition, there is no open conflict, but still there will be no social harmony and there will be no social justice. So secularism must be seen in an integrated manner, one that will bring social harmony and social justice. And for this to happen, what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar suggested was to look for intra-religious reform. Dr. Ambedkar said that when communities view each other as enemies, as menace to each other, then they close ranks. Meaning they are closed for reform. They are closed for taking others into their community, and they are also closed for their own ones to go into other community. So there is no space for any dissent within the community. The voices are muzzled and the internal reforms are stalled. But when the focus shifts from other religion to one's own, then there is an opportunity for deeper introspection. Then multiple and varied kind of voices will come from within the religion. And when voices come from within the religion, then conditions are created to root out intra-religious injustices. For example, the issue of triple talaq, the issue of women not being permitted to dargah or to certain kind of temples. And then we can realize the form of secularism that we have practiced for ages and that is inscribed in our constitution. So how it can be done? The author has asked for shifting from politically led to social movement, socially led secularism in India, and that has to come from the youth, from the minds that have not been corrupted or that have not been hardened by the political discourse. There is a news article on page number 4, confidential report on Assam Accord released on the pretext that people have the right to know what's there in the report. See, last year in November, a committee was set to formulate a provision for implementation of Clause 6 of the Assam Accord. The committee was formed in hurry in the wake of protests in Assam against Citizenship Amendment Bill, which later became Citizenship Amendment Act. The committee was asked to fast-track its report and give recommendation for the implementation of Clause 6 of Assam Accord. Expeditiously, the committee submitted its report in the month of February, and it has been 5 months since the Centre has been sitting on the report. So few members of the committee felt that Centre is disinterested in the report, so in the interest of people's right to know, they have leaked the report. We'll come down to this particular clause of Assam Accord, Clause 6, but we'll begin from the beginning. Protest in Assam against foreigners and illegal immigrants started right after independence. They wanted all the foreigners to be identified and taken out, and the cutoff date demanded by the protesters was 1st of January 1951. But Centre didn't pay heed to these demands. However, the anti-foreigners agitation in Assam started to become very intense from the late 1970s, and from 1979 to 1985. There was severe agitation in Assam for legislative and administrative safeguards for protecting, preserving and promoting the culture and linguistic identity of people of Assam. This movement was led by All Assam Students Union. After 6 years of protest, an agreement was signed between Government of India and the protesters led by All Assam Student Union. That is popularly called as Assam Accord. And 1 year later, in 1986, amendment was done in the Citizenship Act to accommodate the demands of the Assam Accord. Government of India acknowledged the political, social, cultural and economic concern of Assamese people and agreed to revise the electoral database based on that. And for that purpose, the government agreed to identify and deport any and all refugees and migrants after 24th of March 1971. So the cutoff date that was finally accepted was 24th of March 1971. Now, do you know why this date was chosen? Apart from that, Government of India also agreed to secure the international borders against future infiltration. And most importantly, there was Clause 6 in the Assam Accord. Clause 6 reads like this: Constitutional, legislative, and administrative safeguards, as may be appropriate, shall be provided to protect, preserve, and promote the cultural, social, linguistic identity and heritage of Assamese people. There have been many committees that was formed to give recommendation for implementation of clause 6, but nothing ever happened. But since this committee was formed after intense protest in Assam towards the end of last year, so there was hope of Assamese people that this time something is going to happen. But it has been more than 5 months since the report has been submitted and there has been no sign of blink from the center. So the members of All Assam Student Union who were in the committee was led by a High Court judge. There were media persons and there were also representatives from All Assam Student Union. It is the member of the All Assam Student Union who have leaked the report. In the leaked report, we know that there has been radical recommendation made. For example, the cutoff date that was there in the Assam Accord as 24th March 1971, this they're asking to shift back to 1st Jan 1951. Apart from that, in the report there is recommendation for reservation from 80 to 100% in the state legislative assembly, the state local bodies, and the parliamentary seats from the state. Not only that, in the PSUs, in the government employment in Group C, Group D. Not only that, they're also asking for 70% reservation in private employment. Then over and above that, there has to be land rights which will be non-transferable. But since this is a leaked report, this not finally has been accepted by the center, so we will not delve into the recommendations made by the report. There is a news article on page number 11. National Socialist Council of Nagaland (IM) releases details of 2015 Pact. This whole issue of NSC and IM has been covered in detail in the DNS dated 30th June 2020 by our illustrious magical Vaibhav sir. So we are not going to take it up again since it was extensively covered in that DNS. Now we will take question for the day. Yesterday's question was: the Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network can be associated with which country? Philippines, Russia, Nepal, Mongolia. The thing is that only Nepal in the given options is in the Himalayan region. So Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity must be associated with Nepal. This actually is the extension of the Belt and Road Initiative of China into Nepal, and this is a serious concerning issue for India. The question for the day for today is: consider the following statements. The detailed provision and rules of EIA has been enumerated in the Environment Protection Act 1986. The Environment Protection Act 1986 was enacted in the backdrop of Bhopal gas tragedy. Select the correct option: 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, none of the above. Thank you very much for listening to the DNS. Do not forget to attempt the quiz that we have on the ELEARN platform.